Hello everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Clonakilty Bicycle Festival, or as we like to call it, the Clon Bike Fest. We've had an absolutely beautiful day today, out in the sunshine. We were out in the morning putting up all the art bikes that the kids in the schools made around the town, and then we had our Inchydonny regatta at the beach. And yeah, things have been amazing. It was cool to see all the lovely people hanging out at the beach. We're here at the film night. Usually we have a cycle-in cinema on most of our Clon Bike Fests, where we take over the venue in the local hotel of our town. We have a projector, and everyone who comes on their bike gets in free. Otherwise, it's a £5, and we show a bike movie, and we've shown some pretty epic movies over the years. It's always been great crack. A couple of years ago, we even had a short movie competition where we had some incredible films being sent in, and we screened them that night. But because we still have a coronavirus making its way around the world, this year we've had to put all the gig kind of events, or events that are inside in groups, here on YouTube Live. So thanks everyone for joining us. One thing just to quickly say about YouTube Live is it's super fun if you put your comment in the comment box. So please feel very free to heckle or tell a joke or say hi, tell us where you're watching from. It makes us all feel connected, and hopefully, we can enjoy the YouTube Live experience, which we've all come to love. Tonight, we are super honoured to be screening 4 of Paddy Cahill's films. Paddy was a film director and a passionate bike advocate from Dublin, and a friend of the Dublin cycling campaign and many of the groups that we connect with here in the Clonakilty Bike Festival. And Paddy very sadly fell ill last year and passed away just a few months ago. So it's a real honour to have been able to be in touch with Connor, Paddy's brother, and Philip De Roos, who helped Paddy make the movies that we're going to show tonight, and hear a bit about Paddy and delve into his work, which is just absolutely beautiful. And just before we start, I want to just say, on behalf of everyone in Clonakilty Bicycle Festival, to everyone who knew and loved Paddy, we just offer our deepest condolences. From delving into his film work and hearing about him from his friends, he was an incredible man, a beautiful man, and he will be much missed. So it's a great honour to be able to show 3 of his films. We're going to show 3 of the Cycling With movies that he made with Philip, and then we're going to show a very beautiful short little film he made for the Dublin cycling campaign about Professor Richard Mulcahy, who was still on his bike very, very late into his life, as you'll see, and an inspiration to all of us on our bikes. So we're going to do those in a minute. Before we start, a couple of little things to let you know. As I said, chuck some comments in. It's great to see that Steve is here, joining from Skerries North in County Dublin. If you're watching, throw in the comment box where you're watching from, and it'd be great to know that you're here with us. And after the films have been shown, should take about half an hour, we're going to have a live chat with Philip De Roos, who's calling in from his home in Holland, and we can hear all about how they made the films together with Paddy. Before we start, I'll just say we have a couple more events left in the Bike Festival. We have the Zoom fractal cycle tomorrow morning, and if anyone wants to get involved with it, please do send us a message and we'll send you the Zoom link. This is an idea to do a bike ride where we're all solo on our bikes, but we're connected by one of those excellent Zoom calls that we've all been on all year. This time hopefully having a bit more fun. I'm going to be hosting the call, and I'm going to be rolling the dice and calling the directions that we have to take. So hopefully we'll all take a kind of similar fractal journey, maybe discover somewhere new, and hopefully find our way home afterwards. And then in the evening, we've got the Wine, Chocolate and Chats and Bike Chats event here on YouTube Live at 8 o'clock, with Fanula Harkin from Wines Direct and Alison Roberts from Exploding Tree Chocolate, who are going to be talking all about some of the awesome food and biking trips that they've done in Europe. And then we have our final closing Zoom call dance party. We usually finish with a hop and dance party every year, so we're going to have one on Zoom. You can be boogieing in your front room. So yeah, do get involved. Great to have you all here, and without further ado, I'm going to put the films on to watch. Enjoy.
I started about 6 months ago in the summer last year. And I started, well, I suppose I started out of love. My boyfriend's what I think of in my head as a proper cyclist. He's got a racing bike, and he's done the Wicklow 200, and he wears special cycling clothes. And while that didn't particularly encourage me to take it up, because I'm not fit and I don't like cycling clothes and I don't want to go up mountains, he was really excited about the prospect of sort of going on jaunts, I suppose, just trying it out and cycling together. One of the main things that held me back from cycling was vanity, because I don't want to arrive somewhere in a mess or super sweaty or out of breath or red in the face. And for the first 3 months, that's exactly how it was. Once I'd sort of figured it out a little bit better and negotiated, right, you don't have to go there in a crazy hurry and you can wear whatever they like. It turns out you can wear skirts on bikes and things like that. Then it got better. When I was someone who walked into town, or someone who got the bus across town, or someone who drove across town, there are distinct kind of ways of thinking about yourself and about the city around you, right? So if you're a driver, you just think about the routes you can take. There are places you can drive and there are places you can't drive. When you're on a bus, you're thinking about, right, what's the bus route that can get me the closest, things like that. I really love cycling because you're so much more active. I don't mean physically active, although sure, but your brain sort of has to be awake when you're cycling. You have to be thinking about, well, obviously all the traffic around you, but like, how can you get the closest you can get? What are the routes where you're gonna have to hop off for a second? What are the places where you want to avoid because I'm lazy and there are too many hills? So for a long time I studied American cities. That's what I was interested in. And then I was looking at New York in the 50s and 60s. And what got me excited about that time was looking at how there was the beginning of like a protest movement and beginnings of people getting invested in their cities and feeling like they owned them and had to fight for them. And as I was finishing my PhD, I sort of looked up for the first time in a long time and began to see that similar things were happening in Dublin 50 years later. Dublin is changing, right? For a long time, Irish people had and still probably have, a sense that cities are things other countries have, right? That if you want to live in a city, you go to London, you emigrate, you go to New York, etc. And they couldn't really think about Dublin as a city. And then we got rich all of a sudden in the 90s, and people with money started to treat Dublin like a city, but like in this weirdly haphazard way, like importing Starbuckses and having these amazingly expensive hotels and things like that. And then once it all kind of crashed down again, you had this place that was like half still, you know, town more than city, and then all of a sudden these Hiltons and these international chains and huge apartment buildings that no one's living in, or offices that no one's living in, and it's like a space no one can get their head around. One of the things I've found out is that people disagree a lot about what a good city is. For me, it's a fair city, like the show. It's somewhere that you can still have those dreams about. You can still have the feeling that when you go there, you're going to the center of something, you're going to the place where stories happen. But at the same time, it has to be somewhere everyone can go for those dreams, you know? And it means that you have to work really hard not to drive out the people who can't maybe afford to live in the super high-tech cities that are kind of becoming more the norm, and people who can't afford to live in the sort of penthousey areas. So for me, it's about trying to find a balance between maybe some of the aspirational ideas about cities and some of the more democratic ideas. So, City Intersections is an open forum. Once a month, bring speakers together and invite whoever wants to come along to come along. It's open to whoever. And we sit usually in something like a pub, and speakers kick things off, and it's just open discussion and open conversation. And you get this mix of people, some of whom know a lot about Dublin, some of whom know a lot about cities elsewhere, who've lived elsewhere. Sometimes it's just people who are curious. And I'm proud of it because it's working. I like that I got into cycling as it was becoming more popular in Dublin. So I never get to, you know, do the classic hipster line like, oh, I cycled before it was cool. I did not. But I think it's part of how Dublin is changing kind of its attitude to itself and what it can be, and people are sort of starting to think about Dublin differently. And part of that is giving up the sort of idea a little bit maybe of like being successful is moving out of Dublin, buying a house somewhere too far away, like a suburb far away, and commuting every day. That's a model that's beginning maybe to break down. And so people who get into cycling, I think now, are people like me who never thought of themselves as particularly, you know, fit or outdoorsy or whatever, that it's just becoming something that makes sense. If you live close enough and you want to be part of Dublin every day and be part of the city every day, then the bike is what makes most sense.
Hi. Goeiedag. Hallo. Ja, gaat goed. People of Amsterdam are very self-confident and they are in fact very arrogant. And well, this is and I think those are important elements for creativity. And well, as I said, it is also a magnet for all those self-confident people who really want to make something out of their life.
Koningin Beatrix, heeft zij dat gemaakt? Dat is dat mannetje met dat zaagje.
Ik heb geen idee. Ik zou het je niet durven vertellen.
Oké, dat is de vraag hier.
Where do we go? Well, as former mayor, everybody knows who I am. So a lot of people are saying hello or are asking questions or things like that. Yeah, you'll find out. Well, it's a city with more than 170 nationalities, all different cultures. And of course, that's not always easy. But at the same time, well, that's what I thought one of the most important things you could do, trying to make it livable for all those different people. People living in all different areas of the city, and at the same time, always having in mind that all those people came here because they thought that this is a nice life, and you can have a nice life here. Well, driving through this street, which is always ameliorated a lot in the last couple of years. But in the first place, driving cars is very, very expensive in the city, because if you want to park it, it costs you a fortune. So that makes it, well, necessary for a lot of people to bike. But at the same time, and now if you look around here, there are lots of bikes, many bikes, and well, I'm glad I'm not mayor anymore, because I think that it becomes a problem, and also because of the fact that all those bikes, like all the cars, they become more beautiful and bigger. So it's really difficult to park your bike. So maybe it's necessary that you're going to pay for it. But that's bike parking, yes, maybe. But more than I think more than 60% of the people in Amsterdam go to their work by bike. So biking is a very important element for the economy of the city. Dit is de... Goeiedag. Goed. Dank u wel. This building here is called the West Indies House, going back to the time that Amsterdam was, well, the capital of an important, the capital, to some extent, capital of the world, and the West Indies was part of the Netherlands. So that was, which is now islands like Curaçao and so on. Well, during the 17th century, Amsterdam was the capital of the world because of the fact that at that time the people of Amsterdam were very good traders, and one of the important trades was slavery. Well, looking back to that, we are not proud of that, but well, that are the facts. It's important that we, as the people living now in the city, know where all those richness is coming from, and that's also part of the slavery. Yes, it's terrible, but it is the truth. And all those beautiful houses, all built in 50 years. Here we have 3 important canals. Here, this is one of the beautiful ones. It's all built in 50 years. All those canals are made and the houses are built in 50 years. It's unbelievable. Now we are on a Saturday in the afternoon and it's quiet. And living here, it's quiet. And at the same time, you're in the middle of the city. You're in the middle of everywhere. You're in the middle of, there is a beautiful, we have beautiful music, we have all kinds of culture, and you're very near. Every period of the year it's different. When it's snowing, then it's great to be here to bike around. In springtime, like now, it is a little bit crispy, but it is, well, here, look all those cars. Although it's so expensive to drive by car, still there are a lot. They have to stop. Hi. So, and we just go through it by bike. That's dat gaan we doen.
Dat gaan we weer, dag. Hey, hallo. Nog gefeliciteerd met je verjaardag.
Goed hè?
En ik ben net hier op.
Amsterdam is a small city. This was my sister-in-law. It is a small city. Europe is declining, and of course Amsterdam is part of it. And for example, cities in China, they are getting a better position. Nevertheless, when you are in cities in China, well, for example, Beijing, it destroyed a lot of the original part of it, and that is what makes a lot of Western European cities still attractive. That they have their history, and it's what is important, that you try to combine the history with the future, and therefore the fabric of a city is important. And in this respect, I think that Amsterdam has a great chance to be an attractive city also in the future, and I really hope that will be the case.
Excellent.
I don't remember being on learning how to cycle or anything like that, but I do remember an old deaf man who was like my granddad, was actually my mum's cousin, telling me that he cycled every day and he never got a puncture, and I really need to be much more careful. So for years I thought, I had this notion that his tires had cement in them, that was something really magical, that he never ever got a puncture. So obviously I was getting punctures left, right and centre. I'm true blue dub, but actually my parents are deaf and they're sign language users. So I suppose my upbringing was a little bit different. So I would have been brought up in a sign language using house, which means that we signed to each other. We used a visual and manual language to communicate. But also that comes with its own very special culture. And my parents would have been very, very involved, and still are very involved in the deaf community. So yeah, it was a very different perspective on life, I suppose. Dubliners are hilarious. They're everyone beeping at you and giving you the finger and I think it gave me a super sharp visual sensibility because the visuals are like a grammatical mode of communicating, and it also gave me a real understanding of oppressed minorities and a kind of a struggle for recognition. It was very under-recognised. It was banned. I remember in public my parents telling me not to sign to them, for example, because it wasn't allowed, kind of thing. But of course, for my parents to understand me, I had to sign. That's what we did very much in the privacy of the family home. The oldest girl child of a couple who are deaf is the kind of designated interpreter in the house. So I would have done a lot of phone calls. I was the link person between my grandmother and my aunts and uncles, like hearing aunts and uncles, or outside forces like bank managers, or even down to milkmen. They're all going to mass. When I was a teenager, I wasn't a rebellious teenager at all. I was actually super protective of them. But at the same time, I got away with an awful lot. Sneaking out your bedroom window and then just calling for your sister to open the front door for you. As a teenager, that was really great. And I don't know, but within that kind of freedom, I think that I didn't, and none of my siblings, we didn't go off the rails. I started out in art college in studying painting, and really through a very organic process realized that I wanted to involve my body more, and started dreaming of these kind of sign language influenced things. I didn't even know they were called performances at the time. And broke away from painting as a product and was looking at it much more as a process. So the act of painting I became much more interested in. And then of course with more kind of investigation, realized that there was a whole genre or a form called performance art, and it was almost like, yeah, that's what I should be doing. That's for me. So I suppose often if I'd have a very potent image that I can't get out of my mind, and I might have whatever way it occurred, a confluence of influences from the day, or just a mad off the wall dream, I usually bring them into the studio and I let them kind of sit there for a while until they won't stop bothering me. And then I know that it's an image I have to do. I have to get rid of almost, and take it outside of my imagination and try it. And usually I try it with my own body, actions or gestures, and then build up a whole performance. I would have made a piece a couple of years ago called Yellow, where you're wet for about 4 hours, and it's pretty cold. It's nothing major. It's not like old school 70s performance art practice where they shot themselves or they whipped themselves or cut themselves. It's not that kind of grand masochistic statement, but it's still particularly taxing on the body, and you just keep going. That's it. For me personally, my particular practice is completely dependent on bridging that gap of endurance with the collusion of the audience, because if there was no audience there, I wouldn't be sitting in a dress full of bubbles and wet and cold for 4 hours. I'd get up and dry myself off, cycling to a standstill. I'm convinced that actually the audience that attend live performances are performing themselves. So they're not only an integral part of the performance for me as the artist, as the performer, but actually they change things. Joseph Beuys, a German performance artist, famously said, "Every man artist," and certainly in the sphere of live performance, that is, I would contend, the case. Yeah. He was a performance artist. He was a lot of things. He made sculptures, he made performances, but I think some of his performances are iconic, significantly important works. And so I paid homage to him, I suppose, in a work I made up here along the Bulwark. Wow! Wow! So here she is, my little beach seat. And in very simple terms, I just sat in there with all these pinky kind of brown uncooked potatoes. That performance was hilarious because I accidentally told my dad, and I don't normally tell him about these things because he doesn't like them, and because there was no nudity involved, I said it was okay for him to come along, and he was here for the full 6 hours and almost hysterical. He kept, when there was no audience around, he kept going, "Please stop, that's enough now," that's a signing at me. Sorry. Yeah, she's right up the top there, saying hello to the rest of the world from the island nation that we are. I've played around with this, the image of Madonna quite a bit in my work. It's a kind of a running thread, and so I just love all these placements that we see of her everywhere, and especially Ireland. But this whole notion of a female deity that's at once non-sexual but also has been imaged very sexually.
My name is Paddy Cahill, and I've been a member of the Dublin cycling campaign as long as it existed. I was about 15 when we started cycling, when the old Crocs, I remember them very well. My first bike I got at a police auction, and it was £1 it cost. That would have been about 1937. I was 15 then. Dublin was a cycling city. At rush hour, the bridge down at Portobello there was packed with cyclists going in the morning and coming out in the evening, and there were very few cars, of course. During the war, we were entirely dependent on cycling, and our bikes were very poor. But when we travelled around on holidays, that time we had to carry spare links, spare tubes, and all the rest. But punctures were frequent, and chains breaking frequent, particularly climbing up the hills in Kerry and West Cork. 1966, 68, I think, 1968. I bought it in 1971, and I've had it since. So I've had it for over 40 years. That's interesting. My wife Louise is a cyclist as well, so we cycle a lot. And I decided to give up my car when I was 90. Not that I had any problem with it, but I now more or less confined to my bike, walking, the bus, and an occasional taxi. Most of my close friends, of course, are dead now, but one or two of them were cyclists of sorts, but I don't think any of them were as committed to cycling as I have been. I think you need to be very fit and to remain fit and in good physical and mental state if you're going to cycle in the 80s and 90s as I'm doing. I'm a member of the Dublin Cycling Campaign. I totally support the campaign to have much more cycling in Dublin. We could. There are huge advantages. I needn't go into them now, but we've often mentioned them. Health, safety for people who are careful, and for the whole question of the environment. Also, the social side, you're in touch with people while you're more or less isolated as a motorist, you see. There are many reasons.
Amazing. I'm just loving those films. They're beautiful, and I have so many questions. In just a sec, I'm gonna dial in on Zoom to Philip De Roos, who's over in Holland, and who was the collaborator who helped Paddy. And the two of them made those movies, the Cycling With series, together. I was just gonna say before I dial into him, thanks everyone for your comments. It's lovely to know that there's people in Dublin watching, down here in Clonakilty, even in Luxembourg. Julian Bass, great to see you. So yeah, please use the chat box to ask any questions for Philip, or if you have any comments or just things that you'd like to say, I'll be monitoring that while I'm chatting to Philip. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, I'm going to dial into Zoom and see if Philip's there. Hello, Philip.
Hey, Justin.
Hi.
Hi.
You're connected. Thanks so much for joining us. It's wonderful.
You're very welcome. No, thank you.
Yeah. I've just really
you.
enjoyed watching those movies, and I have tons of questions. Just before we start, tell us where you're calling from.
Haarlem, the Netherlands. So to the west of Amsterdam. Though the arrogant, self-confident Amsterdam people would say that this is actually the Amsterdam suburbs by now. So Amsterdam West, Amsterdam Beach. Yeah, no, but it's actually an old Dutch city, Haarlem. Haarlem in New York was named after it.
Wonderful, yeah. It looks like you've got as good weather as we have down here in West Cork, so that's great. Yeah. So yeah, tell me.
Sun's
Philip,
always shining here, just like.
Is it? Yeah, it looked like it in the film. Tell me how you. Yeah. Let's start just by tell me, how did you meet Paddy Cahill, and how did you get this idea together to start working on these films?
So we moved. I met Paddy at the Dublin Cycling Campaign, where we moved to Dublin in 2010. My girlfriend and myself to set up a bike shop selling Dutch bikes and cargo bikes. That didn't go well at all, but we had a lot of fun. And one of the things about being Dutch is it gives you instant sort of street cred on everything that's related to cycling. So we hadn't actually been active that much in the Netherlands on cycling advocacy. I mean, you have a bike, just like you have a vacuum cleaner, everybody has one, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing too special. But in Dublin was a different thing altogether, and the Dublin bikes had just been introduced, and we were very interested personally, and also from sort of our little bike shop perspective. How do we get this cycling thing going? What's cooking here in Dublin? And we were also, on the lookout for people to talk to, because we were, we didn't know anybody. So we were connected to Damien, actually, via somebody, Jan, in the Netherlands, who we knew. And in our first week, we went to the Dublin Cycling Campaign meeting, and Paddy was there right away. Thinking back to that, to those sessions, I actually can't really remember a lot of what we discussed during the sessions themselves, but I can remember the talks in the pubs, which always, followed after 2 hours of grueling conversation on cycling infrastructure, and that's where we met Paddy, and
Right.
and we had a lot of fun. Hit it off straight away, also with Connor.
Oh,
so,
great, yeah.
So that's
from
where
everything I heard about Paddy, he had a fantastic and slightly dark sense of humour. A lot of people have mentioned that to me. So
that's correct.
I can just imagine that happening in the pubs.
Very funny. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's and from that we did a lot of stuff together. Actually, in the weekends there were a lot of markets. We went to electric picnics, stuff like that, and the cycling campaign really to us was sort of our Dublin family, and we're very grateful for all the time they spent on these two duchies in Dublin. There, and we shot some footage for the campaign. We shot a couple of films for our bike shop, and then at some point we were criticizing other sort of cycling movies, and this sort of idea of cycling with started coming up.
Okay, interesting. It's beautiful. The first thing that struck me watching them, and this is coming from someone who, in my day job, I'm a composer of music, and many times for films, is that there's no music, but as my musician's ear was hearing all the rhythms and the sort of sounds that you hear as you're biking, and it was really sort of meditating in a way, and it brought me back to that idea. I ride a bike just to get around, from A to B rather than driving a car, and you feel yourself getting into the rhythm and the way the mind then starts to work. I think it's beautiful for Irish culture to see that, because for most people, I think the dominant culture with bikes in Ireland is buying a really, really expensive racing bike and wearing all lycra and having to wear, safety equipment and going as fast and as far as you can on a Sunday morning. And a lot of people feel alienated from cycling or riding a bike because they feel that isn't what they want to do. So watching those films, was that sort of part of where you were coming from with making them?
Yeah, so it's spot on what you're saying, and obviously here I'm preaching to the converted, but we were quite passionate about the sporty, the sporty aspect of it being all wrong in our perspective. That the cycling is a sensual experience. All the senses are involved. There's music, there's beauty, and there's social encounters, and it's all stuff. Paddy being the artist, me not at all, trying to capture that in film. And I was really inspired by him and his vision, and completely agreed. Also, I was as a campaigner frustrated really with, let's say, the successes the car industry has with targeting people's emotions, making them believe they need a car, that it's going to make their life better. Well, and there's not so much of that for cycling, whilst that actually does, deliver on the promises it would make. So Paddy really wanted a sort of social, beautiful cycling film with personal stories and an easy pace, a lot of social interactions, and then also him being a professional and a filmmaker, beauty. Shots that and that was hard work, It was all hard work, but I'll get to that in a bit maybe. But
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that first struck me. Damien,
you're right. It is quite different from. Yeah.
Damien, as we were watching, Damien Otuma has said lovely footage, and it was really gorgeous photography. I mean, I was just immersed myself. I felt like it really brought me back to so many of the bike fests that we've done here, where we've gone out with about 20 or 30 people, and we amble along on the way to a picnic or something, and everyone starts to get into those kind of conversations that inevitably happen when you're pedaling and alongside someone. I've actually got a picture that I found on the internet. I'm going to show everyone right now. You probably won't be able to see this, Philip, but this will show everyone the setup, and then I want you to tell me practically how you went about it. But there's a lovely picture now that I'm going to show everybody. Here you guys are. Paddy's on the front of a sort of front rack with a cushion under his bum, holding quite a big film camera with a microphone on top, and you're on the back, smiling at the camera, but sort of navigating what looks like a tricky junction on the quays in Dublin, which is just amazing. Tell me about how you decided to get the setup.
So the logistics of it, so Paddy chose me, I guess, for having strong legs probably, and being good at cycling. And I'm, being a Dutchman, I can navigate myself on a bike quite well. And I was also interested in interviewing and the production side of it. But Paddy really was the mastermind behind the logistics and the style of the film. So on this bike you're looking at is a Dutch bike, obviously, which was made in Hogeveen, which is in the east of the Netherlands. Very sturdy, very heavy, and it's actually a factory bike. So they use it in the steel facilities where they make steel factories in the Netherlands with huge baskets in front, and then they carry stuff around for mechanics. It was strong enough to, I guess, hold somebody around, let's say, 60, 70 kilos, so somebody of Paddy's size. And the first one we did without the cushion, that was very uncomfortable. And that also led to, bumpy film material, because that was, and then we found a large cushion from one of Paddy's couches, put that on, and then traction, where this was all before there was software, correcting all that. And he had a nice old-fashioned camera which he loved. So then at some point we had our thing going, and Paddy actually shipped an extra suitcase because he visited Amsterdam obviously a couple of times as well to do more filming there, and we got the same bike here, but he shipped them all in one big suitcase.
Okay, So there's a moment after looking at the picture. There's a moment in the Cycling with Amanda, the third of the films we just watched, where she really starts to go for it. I mean, you can tell that she's standing up on the pedals and she's mashing quite hard. And I was thinking of you cycling this heavy Dutch bike with Paddy on the front and a heavy camera. The way you kept up with her was quite impressive, Philip. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
well done.
Yeah, thanks for noticing. That's I guess when we started filming, the bike films out there were really all in the sort of the GoPro style, right? So there would be bike films that will be sort of fisheye lens on the front of a steering wheel, and very sporty and very flashy, really about the bike in the foreground. And Paddy, rightly so, said that's all wrong. We don't need that. We don't want that. It has to be social. It has to be personal. There need to be stories of interesting people, tightly cropped around the face of the person, not about the bike in the background, and an easy pace, not sport. You don't need to be fit. And then so the films we saw, Madeline said, I started cycling for love, I guess, right? Very easily, sort of cycling around somewhere. I think it was near Kilmainham Jail or something. And also Job in Amsterdam, very easy pace. But Amanda, she was a comet. She just bolted off straight from the beginning. And I remember looking at Paddy, what, go. So and actually, Paddy was a lot. He was very, very concrete and specific in the instructions he gave during his. I think, shut up, go faster, left. Also, you need to keep it quiet, not to interfere with the, but that was a,
Cool. And one question I was going to ask
she got
was,
off the bike finally, I could rest.
Yeah, you could rest. That's a beautiful ending when she just walks up towards the promontory there. One question I was going to ask you, how did you choose the people? Were they people that you just came into contact with and thought this would be someone interesting to chat to on a bike ride, or,
So there was a lot of work involved on that, actually. I mean, if the logistics, apart from first finding a bike and making that work, and then we did some tryouts, and then the production of it, finding people who have a story to tell, people who have an interesting story to tell, that was actually quite hard. One of the funny things about Job is, he was the mayor of Amsterdam. He was a Time Person of the Year. So we thought, that's going to be very interesting. And Paddy, in the end, hated the story. He's like, this is some sort of stupid Amsterdam commercial he's going on about, and Amsterdam being the, former capital of the world. What an arrogance, So that actually disappointed a bit in the story. But he was very fond of Amanda. That was one of his favorite films, which I think is indeed, and that was his pick, a very interesting story, interesting lady, with lots of stuff in there with the sign language and her art, and so we had, we intended to go to up to 100 of these films. Sadly, we're not going to make that, but we had 18 at least that we did make, and finding the right people, that was one of the challenges.
And was it, how many years was it over to make those 18?
2 or 3.
Yeah, that's pretty good going.
It was 3 years. We did typically we would do 3 films in 3 days, and I would, first I was still living in Dublin, so that was easier from a logistical point of view. But it was also a lot of fun that when I moved back to Amsterdam, that we sort of every half year 3 days, and then 3 films, 3 or 4. And it gave us a bit of time for planning, and then
and Philip, you would have, Paddy was behind the lens. You would have been navigating the city as well as carrying Paddy on the front of the bike, and thinking about questions to ask to keep the sort of flow of the interview, I suppose. Fascinating.
Exactly.
I mean, because what I loved about it was the way, just like on all the sort of social bike rides I've ever been on, things start off very casual and very kind of small talk, and then it very quickly gets into something really, really interesting and really, really engaging. That was such a common way of when you're cycling along with someone, something about the wheels turning and the brain turning.
Exactly.
It's amazing how that
exactly.
comes in.
People being So that was so. One of the things Paddy taught me was in filmmaking, how do you interview somebody and get an interesting story out of that? Right. And I remember the first one we did, he berated me for being so talkative. You just need to shut up, man. You just ask your question and then keep your mouth shut for 2 reasons. One, the audio, you have an audio recorder as well, so everything you're messing with my audio channel there, and you want the other person to do the talking. And since we're cycling, the brain is sort of occupied with something, so they'll talk. So you just need to just bike.
Keep up.
Keep up. Slow down. Keep up. And as we progressed, there's a couple of, so the Madeline one we made and that by then we had noticed that when you're sort of cycling, there a lot of the shots are up quite close, right? Because that's where you cycle next to somebody. But the interesting footage, Paddy thought rightly so, was when you go wide, and then when there's trees or signposts or whatever in between, and that sort of gives you so. By the end, it was really hard work in the sense that ask question, go wide, go back, stay behind. So when Amanda sort of walks onto the the promontory there, that was also Paddy said, okay, now stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
See how that all sort of,
yeah, beautiful. There's a moment in the first film we watched, Cycling with Madeline, where she's cycling along and Paddy's got the camera on her, and then you see this, I'm sure everyone noticed this, you see this sort of slightly shady looking character with a plastic carrier bag, and then he tries to sort of squeeze his way through the fence, fails to do that, hops the fence, and Madeline's sort of looking at him, and you see Paddy kind of going, wonder what's going on there. All those quirky moments all those quirky things that everyone notices when you're in the bike rather than in the car. You notice those details. And I think it was brought out beautifully.
That was a hilariously lucky shot. And he also keeps on running then, right? So he disappears out of the screen for a little while, and then he comes back, and you see him in the background, sort of still,
beautiful.
So it's, I guess those. Oh, I need to switch. Bear with me now, Justin. My internet is saying that I'm unstable.
Oh, you're coming across great.
Let me just switch to another. Let me just wait here. Just wait. Bear with me. 3, 2, 1. This is also part of
the Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You sound and look great, Philip.
Okay.
Yeah, we might wrap it up in a minute. It's 9:05 here in
it's 10 here. It's way past my bedtime.
Oh, is it? I'm just looking at the comments here, and I'll just say, Sheila says the Cycling With series is just wonderful. When you hear the words "during the war," that must have been from the final one with Rishtad Malkahi. He's just an inspiration to everybody, I think, to keep on their bikes. Etna says, very inspiring.
Brilliant.
She sent 2 hearts and a big star. And Philip, thanks so much for giving us a few little insights about the making of these films. And people can still go to cyclingwith.com, I believe, to watch them. Yeah, they're all still up there, which is wonderful to be able to see. Yeah, and we're delighted also that Paddy's some of his works exploring cityscapes and architectural films are being shown in Dublin this week as well. So it's been fantastic to celebrate his work. It's wonderful. So Philip, have a great weekend, and see you soon.
So much.
Thanks, Emil, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thanks everyone for coming on.
Okay.
We'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Thanks to Philip for giving us so much lovely insight, and thanks to everyone for your comments and for watching. Rosalind watching from Crumlin, and Damien, lovely to see you on here, Damien. Damien says, good to see you, Philip, been a long time. Thanks, Emil, everyone, for joining us on our film night. If you want to come on the Zoom cycle tomorrow morning, leave us a comment or send us an email to clonbikefest@gmail.com, and we'll send you the Zoom link. It should be super fun. And if you'd like to get a set of 10 postcards, illustrated postcards, you can head to the website. We made those to raise some money for keep the bike festival going another 10 years. Tomorrow night we've got the Wine, Chocolate and Bike Chats event at 8 o'clock here on YouTube Live, our new home for all this kind of stuff. So you can pour yourself a glass of something and get some treats and listen to some more chat about some wonderful bike trips and food. And then we've got the Zoom dance party with DJ Toby Hatchett, where we can all let our hair down and enjoy celebrating another Clonakilty Bicycle Festival. Thanks all. I'm going to see you tomorrow.